Ryan Mitchell stood at the kitchen window of their suburban home, watching his 12-year-old daughter Emma practice cartwheels in the backyard. His chest swelled with pride as her blonde hair, so like her mother's, caught the afternoon sunlight. "She's getting so good at gymnastics," he called to his wife, Victoria. Victoria glanced up from her laptop, her distinctive fox-like ears twitching nervously, a trait common among her hybrid species. Her golden tail swished beneath her chair as she forced a smile. "She takes after you. Determined." Ryan crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her from behind, nuzzling against her neck. Victoria's body tensed momentarily before she leaned into him. Her blonde, wavy hair cascaded over his shoulder as he kissed the sensitive spot behind her ear. "What would I do without you two?" he murmured. Guilt flickered across Victoria's delicate features, the slightly elongated canines, the amber eyes that could shift between human and feline in an instant. She turned in his embrace, her humanoid hands cupping his face. "Ryan, He silenced her with a deep kiss, his hands sliding down her sides. "I know. I love you too." But that wasn't what she'd been about to say. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Ryan found Victoria in their bedroom. She stood before the mirror in silk lingerie, her tail wrapped around her leg, a nervous habit. The setting sun painted gold across her pale skin. "Come here," he said softly. She turned, vulnerability naked in her eyes. Ryan crossed to her, his fingers tracing the unique bone structure of her hybrid face, down her neck, across her collarbones. He'd always loved how exotic she was, the fox and cat traits that made her unlike any human woman. They fell into bed together, bodies intertwining with practiced familiarity. Victoria clung to him desperately as if trying to drown her secrets and passion. Her claws, retractable like a cat's, gently scraped his back as they moved together. Afterward, as Ryan slept peacefully beside her, Victoria stared at the ceiling, tears sliding down her temples. 12 years of lies weighed on her chest like stones. 12 years of letting him believe Emma was his. "Tomorrow," she told herself for the 1,000th time. "Tomorrow I'll tell him the truth." But tomorrow never came.
The truth arrived not through confession, but through biology class. Emma came home excited about a genetics project, chattering about blood types and inherited traits. Ryan helped her create a family tree, proudly contributing his O-positive blood type. "That's weird," Emma said, reviewing her own medical records. "I'm AB positive. Mrs. Henderson said that means both parents need to have A or B." Ryan's smile faltered. "Let me see that." The room seemed to tilt as he processed the impossibility. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her ears flat against her head, a clear sign of distress in her species. "It's probably just a clerical error," she said quickly, her tail rigid. But Ryan was already on his phone, researching, his hands shaking. "Victoria, we need to talk. Now." In their bedroom, with the door locked, the dam finally broke. "There was someone else," Victoria whispered, her eyes unable to meet his. "Before we got married, I thought I wasn't sure, and then when Emma was born, I convinced myself she was yours." "Convinced yourself?" Ryan's voice cracked. "For 12 years? I was scared. I loved you. I love you. I couldn't lose you." "Who?" The single word fell like a guillotine. "Damien Cross, another hybrid. It was brief, meaningless." "Meaningless?" Ryan laughed bitterly. "I have spent 12 years raising another man's child." "She's your daughter," Victoria stepped forward, her hybrid features twisted in anguish. "You raised her. You love her." "Built on a lie." He grabbed his jacket. "I need to be alone." "Victoria, please." But he was already gone. Victoria collapsed onto their bed, her body racked with sobs, her tail curled around herself protectively as the weight of her deception finally crushed her. 3 days later, Ryan ordered a paternity test. The results confirmed what they both now knew: 0 probability of paternity. The man who'd changed diapers, attended every school play, taught Emma to ride a bike, saved for her college fund, none of it mattered biologically. Ryan filed for divorce that week, and then he did something Victoria never expected. He sued her for fraud, emotional distress, and 12 years of financial deception. The sum he requested? Every penny he'd invested in raising a child he'd been deceived into believing was his. $300,000.
The courtroom hummed with tension as attorneys presented their cases. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Her fox ears drooped and her tail lay limp across her lap, visible signs of her emotional state. Ryan sat across the aisle, his jaw set, refusing to look at her. "Your Honor," Ryan's attorney, Patricia Hong, addressed the judge, "this isn't simply a case of infidelity. This is calculated, sustained fraud spanning over a decade. Mr. Mitchell has documentation of every expense: medical bills, education costs, extracurriculars, clothing, food, insurance. He built his entire financial life around responsibilities he undertook under false pretenses." Victoria's lawyer, an older hybrid named Thomas Reeves, stood. "Your Honor, my client made a terrible mistake, but we cannot reduce paternity to mere biology. Mr. Mitchell chose to be Emma's father every single day. That emotional bond was based on a lie," Patricia interrupted. "Mrs. Mitchell had multiple opportunities to reveal the truth. She chose deception every single time." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, studied the documentation. "Mrs. Mitchell, you'll have your chance to testify, but first I want to hear from Mr. Mitchell himself." Ryan took the stand, his voice steady but strained. He described the moment he discovered the truth, the betrayal, the nights he couldn't sleep. "Do you still love Emma?" the judge asked. "With everything I am," Ryan answered immediately. "That hasn't changed. But this isn't about her. It's about being robbed of the truth, of choice, of my right to make informed decisions about my own life." When Victoria took the stand, her testimony was interrupted by tears. Her tail wrapped tightly around the chair leg as she spoke. "I was terrified," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Hybrids already face so much discrimination. I thought if Ryan knew, he'd leave me, and I'd be alone with a baby. So I buried it. I told myself it didn't matter because he loved us." "But it did matter, didn't it?" Patricia pressed during cross-examination. "Yes," Victoria whispered. "It mattered." The attorney presented evidence of Victoria's financial comfort, her six-figure salary as a pharmaceutical sales representative, her inheritance, her ability to pay. She had the means to tell the truth. She chose comfort over honesty. The judge called for a recess, leaving both parties in agonizing limbo. 2 weeks later, they reconvened for the judge's decision. Victoria's hands trembled as she stood, her claws involuntarily extending and retracting, a stress response she couldn't control. Across the courtroom, Ryan stood rigid, his eyes forward. Emma sat in the gallery with Ryan's parents, old enough now to understand what was happening, tears streaming down her young face. Judge Morrison cleared her throat. "I've reviewed all evidence, testimony, and precedents. This case presents unique challenges, particularly given the emotional complexity of parent-child relationships." Victoria's tail coiled tighter around her leg. "However," the judge continued, "we cannot ignore the fundamental fraud committed here. Mrs. Mitchell knowingly allowed Mr. Mitchell to assume paternal responsibilities under false pretenses for 12 years. She accepted his financial support, his emotional investment, and his complete restructuring of life goals, all while withholding truth that was his right to know." The judge's eyes fixed on Victoria. "Your fear, Mrs. Mitchell, while understandable, doesn't excuse 12 years of deception. You had countless opportunities, before marriage, after Emma's birth, during arguments, during intimate moments of trust. You chose silence every time." Victoria's ears flattened completely against her head. Mr. Mitchell documented $287,000 in direct expenses related to Emma's care, education, and upbringing. Additionally, he presents evidence of opportunity costs, career moves he didn't make, investments he didn't pursue, all because he believed he was securing his daughter's future. The judge paused. Therefore, I am ordering Mrs. Victoria Mitchell to pay Mr. Ryan Mitchell $300,000 in damages for paternity fraud, emotional distress, and financial deception. Victoria's knees buckled. Her lawyer caught her arm. Furthermore, the judge added, while Mr. Mitchell has no legal obligation to Emma, given the lack of biological relationship, I encourage both parties to consider her well-being in whatever arrangements they make moving forward. This child is innocent in all of this. The gavel fell. Victoria collapsed into her chair, her body shaking. Across the room, Ryan closed his eyes. No triumph in his expression, only exhaustion. As people filed out, Victoria caught Ryan's eye one final time. She mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." He turned away without responding. The marriage was over, the trust was shattered, and the price of 12 years of lies was now quantified in cold, hard numbers. $300,000.
6 months later, Victoria signed the final payment transfer from her tablet, watching the numbers disappear from her account. The full $300,000, her inheritance, her savings, everything she'd built, gone. She lived now in a modest apartment, her luxurious hybrid features seeming out of place in the sparse surroundings. Her tail draped over the edge of a second-hand couch as she stared at her phone. Emma hadn't spoken to her in 2 months. Ryan had done something Victoria never expected. He'd adopted Emma legally, cementing his role as her father despite the lack of biological connection. Biology doesn't make a father, he'd told the adoption judge. Love and commitment do. I've been her dad for 12 years. I'm not stopping now. The news had broken Victoria completely. She destroyed her marriage trying to keep her daughter, and in the end, she'd lost them both anyway. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Damien Cross, Emma's biological father, standing in the hallway. The hybrid man looked uncomfortable, his own fox-like features similar to Victoria's. I heard about the case. I wanted to see if you were okay. Why would you care? Victoria's voice was hollow. Because I'm not blameless either. I should have been more careful. I should have followed up. He paused. I've been paying child support directly to Ryan. For Emma, it's the least I can do. Victoria's eyes widened. You what? She's my daughter too, biologically. Ryan's a better father than I'll ever be, but I can contribute financially. Damien met her gaze. What you did was wrong, Victoria, but you're not the only one who ran from responsibility. After he left, Victoria sat in the darkness of her apartment. The judge's words echoed. Your fear doesn't excuse 12 years of deception. She'd paid the financial price, she'd lost her family, she'd faced the consequences for the rest of her life. But perhaps, somewhere in all this pain, there was a lesson she should have learned 12 years ago. That love built on lies will always crumble, no matter how carefully you construct it. The truth always surfaces, and when it does, the cost is higher than anyone can afford. The end.